Assalamu alaikum and welcome for all those who are joining us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and possibly others that are sharing the broadcast. Welcome you to this conversation that's really, really urgently needed. As you know, the Islamophobia Studies Center hosts conversations on a regular basis on new authors that are doing work in the field of Islamophobia, but in general on race, racism. We're also, whenever there's a new report on some pressing issues in the global community, we host a conversation. And tomorrow we have a day-long conference focusing on the Islamophobia in Europe, in particular France and in Europe, with the European report on Islamophobia will be presented in the early session. We also have published a couple of reports on specifically on India. One is India stalking bigotry that really mapped out the rise of the PGP, the emergence of the Hindutva as an ideology that have really shaped the political landscape, focusing on the demonization, the otherization of Muslims, and as such. So it's a fully extensive report. We followed it also last year with a report that focused on Islamophobia in India as it relates to COVID-19. As the crisis of COVID-19 emerged in India, the targeting of Muslims as the possible purveyor and spreader of the pandemic use and utilize the demonization of Muslims to yet again violate the rights of Muslims in India. So this is a conversation that we are committed to engage in. But today our conversation is really focusing on one of the most bizarre type of things that you could actually experience, and to think that modern technology apps are used to target Muslim women with the notions of auctioning a Muslim woman on an app. And this is why, as soon as I saw the news, I saw the articles about it, I wanted to really bring Amina Kausar to speak to it. Amina Kausar is an Indian American Muslim entrepreneur. So definitely she has a full-time job to do the work that is needed in her field of specialization, and she will tell us about that. But a few days ago, she found out that she has been put on an auction on an Indian app known as Bollywood. Is that, if I'm pronouncing that correctly?
That is correct.
This app was designed by the Hindu extremists, those who have really been behind the rise of the Hindutva, those who are connected to the RSS, those who actually are positing that Muslims in India are not really belonging to the state and the nation that is there, and have been really attempting to target and humiliate Muslims, and here Muslim women, to silence them, but also to glorify sexual violence against Muslim women who have been outspoken critics of the Hindu nationalist movement in India. And this also has to be put in the context that we have heard many cases of sexual violence directed at women in general and Muslim women in particular. So would like to welcome Amina with us. It's good to have you with us. Maybe you could inform our audience or just take us on uh, really what happened and the details of Hindu extremists auctioning of Muslim women. So we'll have an idea of the details because it is bizarre, but that's the reality that we're living. So go ahead and just take us through it and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Brother Hatem. It's an honor to be talking to you. Uh, the Coming back to your question of what Bully Buy app is, it's basically a harassment tool that was created by the Hindutva elements to target Muslim women on social media. It's a tool that was auctioning Muslim women, targeting Muslim women activists, lawyers, and uh, from women from all professions who were vocal against or opposing the Hindutva ideology. It was hosted on a tech platform called as GitHub. It is a code sharing website before it was taken down. Bullyby app was created in November and it was actually launched on January the 1st, this year 2022. 6 months ago, a similar app called as Sully Deals came into existence with the same pattern of auctioning women during the Eid celebrations. And with Sully Deals, the Hindu men were auctioning Muslim women online as a way of humiliating and intimidating them to silence them. Many Muslim women filed FIRs during that time in the national capital of Delhi, but no action was taken by the police. 6 months later, Bully Deals comes into existence to harass even more and auction even more women compared to what they did with silly deals. This happened because it was complete sheer inaction on incompetence on the Delhi police, leading to the perpetrators thinking and believing that it is okay and giving them power that it is totally okay to just go after Muslim women because they won't be held accountable. And this time with Bulibai, they have come even more stronger. One of the hilarious yet the sad part is that Malala Yousafzai is also one of the women who was auctioned on the app.
Mm,
Now, just consider Malala has no connection with India. She's not an Indian. She has no relationship with India, but she
mm,
is on the app. And then me, I am not even like, I don't live in India. And there are so many women who are not living in India who have been put for auction. The Bulibai app was taken down in about a day or two, while the Sully Deals app, the one that came before that, was taken down in about like 20 days. And
and these apps are on, they are available on the Apple App Store.
these are not like Apple App Store apps where you can just go and download them. These are a code repository which is
Mm,
available on GitHub. That's a Microsoft tool or subsidiary, if you can call it. It's owned by Microsoft, you can, if I can put it that way. And you can just go ahead. So this would be distributed amongst those Hindu men and circulated amongst the social media, and then they download the app and stuff like that. They, I don't think, would have been able to do it on Apple or Google because that would be having a scrutinization process the moment you actually kind of
mm,
ask for an app. And coming back to your question again, there were roughly 100 women who were auctioned, and
mm,
the Sully Deals app, when it came into existence, and it was not taken by for not taken out for about 20 days, the Hindu men were indulging in sexual fantasies, the rape fantasies of Muslim women, and all sorts of videos and comments were coming into picture. Tweets about sexualization of Muslim women were happening, and this time, last time I think it was 80 women. This time it is more than 100 women that were auctioned. But this time the cases were filed in a different state, which were not led by the BJP government. So the perpetrators were caught. It is said that there were four people who were caught, and all of them were in the ages from 18 to 21, and
mm.
all of them were from good, healthy family backgrounds. They were Few were engineering students, and the only reason that they created this app that they told was a pure hatred towards Muslim women, Indian Muslim women to be specific.
Now, how did you specifically came to know about your name being on the app and the fact that there's an auction that involves you? Uh, it must have been like, were you alerted by someone? How did that come about?
So I'm a activist also, apart from my profession of being an entrepreneur. So I was being vocal as usual on the Bullyby app. It was day one passed by after the app came into existence. Day two passed by. I was just speaking up for my sisters, my Indian Muslim sisters, and I was like condemning the act and standing in solidarity with them. Day two and a half ish was the time when someone, a friend of mine, just asked me if I know that I was on the app. And I was just mentioning that I might not be, or I don't think I am. And then they send me a screenshot, and underneath, is my Twitter handle with a picture of mine, and say it reads bully bye of the day. Bully bye, again, to give you an idea, is a vulgar slur or a vulgar phrase that is implying that a woman is a prostitute.
Hmm.
And the feeling that the gross feeling that you get is like really hard to describe in words. Initially, when I found that out and when I saw my screenshot, I actually did not even look at my screenshot out of shock. And then I just shrugged it off because I didn't. The whole aim of the creation of this app is to silence you, to traumatize you, to make you not speak about it. So I just shrugged it off because it did not affect me much. And the first person I spoke to was obviously my husband. I told him that this happened, and he literally pushed me to talk about it. He asked me to be vocal about it. I have
Hmm.
never ever come on TV or any kind of online interviews to talk about, even when I was in activism. But in the past week, I have given like 4 video interviews, and I have been writing op-eds and talking about this, creating more awareness, because this country, the United States, they are not aware of what is happening back in India. And they should be particularly aware, because as an
Hmm.
Indian American Muslim woman in this land, if I am not safe, then I don't think anyone else is safe in this land from the Hindutva groups.
Yeah, I'm really reminded in terms of this conversation that Edward Said's work on Orientalism and on uh, the colonized South. There's constant focus on the women and the need to both dominate, sexualize, as well as attack women as a sign of conquest, control, domination. And then for us to consider, if we just remember the Bosnian genocide, where one distinctive feature of the genocide was the rape of Bosnian women. So I am reminded of this relationship that exists in terms of otherizations of targeting that is present both in history as well as most in the contemporary period.
That is true. So, this should not be taken as an isolated incident where you can just say that this is carried out by a lone wolf or a maniac. It is a part of the larger society, the larger conspiracy of regularly dehumanizing Muslims, Muslim women especially, subjugating an entire community by targeting their women folk. And it's a very old Hindutva strategy. You vilify the Muslim women, which will eventually make it easy for Hindu men to make it easier to target the Muslim women. So when you commit a crime, in your mind you're not thinking that you are actually committing a crime, rather you think it's like a revenge that you're taking, right? So and you're very right in saying that rape has always been used as a tool for uh, hatred, or to take revenge upon the enemy per se that you consider. Numerous programs have been conducted against Muslims in the
Hmm.
past, and Muslim women have been specifically targeted. It is not surprising to say that the ruling party BJP is the political wing of RSS, which follows the ideology, and RSS preaches rape of Muslim women as a tool to subjugate Muslims. Not far ago, if you take multiple cases, I would want to, just bring your attention to this, that
Hmm.
Asifa's case. Asifa was a 8-year-old young child who was abducted, gang raped, murdered by 6 Hindu men in 2018, and one of them was juvenile.
Hmm.
Criminalizing triple talaq without consultation with the Muslim community or the Muslim women who have been affected, and moving or inevitably targeting the Muslim women who would suffer with abandonment and the lack of financial resources once the husband is in jail, or the love jihad laws where it is both affecting the Muslim men and Muslim women. Married Kashmiri women was trending amongst Indians after Kashmir was stripped of the autonomy.
Hmm.
the filthy, slanderous, derogatory way the Shaheen Bagh protesters were called. They were called as paid anti-Indian agents, or they were said that they are available to rent for 500 rupees, which is like not even a dollar. We all know that with the recent reports, we all know that Rana Ayub is one of
Hmm.
the Indian journalists and a very famous personality in India, Arfa Khanam Sherwani. They are on the top 10 list of the most abusive tweets that they receive on Twitter. Women were raped during Muzaffarnagar riots. Sorry, I take the word back. Muzaffarnagar violence in
Hmm.
2013, further harassed, and all those perpetrators were let loose without any charges. Like
Hmm.
no arrests were made and no convictions were made, and they are still at loose at large. Uh, Not going far away, 2020, a pregnant woman Muslim, 6 months, she was pregnant 6 months, Safura Zargar, she was incarcerated during the anti-CAA protest. She was in jail for a good 2 months, if I'm not wrong. And then
Hmm.
with huge protests and huge outcry, she was released later. So, yes, and all this to say that Muslim women in general, in particular, and women in general are not safe in India. India, if I am not wrong, is also called as the rape capital of the world because
Hmm.
India is considered not really safe for women. Even on the United States travel website, if you go there, it mentions that India is a country not very safe for women, and it is said that like you can just go ahead and read. I'm not making this up. It's on
Hmm.
the U.S. government website itself that women should be really careful when they visit India. So I think being an Indian just puts me to shame, but it is how it is, and it has to be said.
Yeah. Uh, I'm just reminding, and maybe just to give, you began to have the conversation on the larger context, that we have a prime minister, Narendra Modi, who actually was responsible for the Gujarat violence and for the death and destruction that was visited on the community in Gujarat. Then we have the Barbary messages and the whole push toward demolishing and taking over the mosque. And we have almost a 20-year period of this intense Islamophobic genocidal approach. So maybe if we could just begin to talk, is like what is taking place in India? Because in here in the Western, they refer that India is the largest democracy in the world. And I would respond, well, yes, you could be a large democracy while actually being on the threshold of a genocide. South Africa was a democracy for white while practicing apartheid. So maybe it just what is taking place? What is the PGP party? What is RSS? What is the status of the Muslim community? And also, there are some churches that are being attacked as well during Christmas period. Christmas celebrations were being attacked by RSS and Hindutva individuals. So there's is really we need some maybe some discussions of the circumstances and maybe later on of steps that we could take collectively.
So I would sum up your question. You asked me so many
I
questions.
know, but I'm just like PGP. What is taking place, and
Right.
how did they get into this position at this
Right.
point?
So basically, I would sum up as India is under a genocidal watch or a
Mm.
genocidal threat, and how I think, should the world be concerned and what can the world do for my own community back home? So, first of all, I wanted to say that genocide is a process, it's not like a one time event
Mhm.
that would happen, right? So it's a process. Taking a step back, if we look at India, if you even just Google and spend like 5 minutes on Google, you would know the number of pogroms that have happened in the history of independent India. I would start by saying not long ago, even before I was born, in 1982, Nelly massacre happened, where a place in Assam was where a place in Assam, there were 3,000 people who were killed in 48 hours. Not to forget, they were Muslims, obviously. 1992, Babri Masjid and Bombay program happened.
Mhm.
Babri Masjid Babri Mosque, to be precise, was illegally demolished, which led to a huge communal violence and subsequent pogrom of Muslims. 2002, the Gujarat riots that you are talking about, where where the unofficial number is about 2,000, but the official numbers are hidden as per like 1,000 plus, and where there were 2,000 members killed, women were raped, and according to Human Rights Watch, the abdomens of pregnant women were cut open and fetuses were removed and thrown in fire. So all of this was a process that was brewing like since the establishment of independent India. The latest example that I can give is the 2020, the Delhi pogrom, where more than 40 people were killed, 40 Muslims were killed, the businesses were destroyed, homes burnt in the capital city of India, while President Trump was there. He was a president back then. So, coming back to your question, genocide needs to be understood better when we are using the term genocide.
Hmm.
There are 10 stages of genocide, which was propounded by the Genocide Watch itself, and it has multiple aspects to it. I wouldn't list down all the 10 stages, but I would just list down like the last three, maybe. So, the last three or four would be like the preparation, the persecution, the extermination, and then the denial. It also starts with something called as dehumanization. It's one of the stages. So what is happening in India right now is multiple stages of genocide. Like, you cannot say that there is only one stage of genocide happening in one go. So all those stages could occur concurrently at the same time or one at a time. And Muslims have been targeted by laws, dehumanized in the society. They have been deprived of their citizenship with the CAA laws that the
Hmm.
Modi government has brought in, even though they have lived in this land for thousands of years, right? The ninth of the 10 stages of genocide is extermination. And it is said that India is on the next stage of genocide. And because stage 8 is already happening, it appears that India would be moving towards the stage 9 in the stages of genocide. And in fact, Genocide Watch has an alert on Kashmir and Assam right now.
Yes.
Why should people be concerned? Simply because we are all human beings and it is our moral responsibility to speak up. And the last time the similar genocides like Rwanda or Bosnia, for example, the example that you gave, and the world knew about it, the world did nothing about it. Similarly, during the Holocaust, the people knew about it, but there was nothing done about it.
Mm.
But for this particular Indian context, I think the world should know about it more and more. Awareness should be created. We know about it, and if we do not, it is an opportunity for us to actually take an action so that we can stop it before it happens.
Yeah. I'm just, shocked that Narendra Modi arrived and visited the United States.
Did you
And
know that he was banned for 10 years before he arrived?
yeah, during the Gujarat, I know for a period of time he was not. When he was the governor, he was actually under the list of not being admitted to the U.S.
That is correct.
But in the most recent two visits, he was celebrated as a figure, much more than a rock star, with this
Why
gathering in
not? You should
Houston.
understand by now.
Yeah, in the Silicon Valley, in the Bay Area, they had him in this massive arena to talk, but also in part of the Muslim world as well. That he was given the highest honors by United Arab Emirates, red carpet visits. So, how do you explain this? What is taking place from a U.S. policy, just to think about, and why we don't see the same type of pressure that is applied to India today, seeing this massive human rights violation.
To answer your question, I would start by saying the party BJP, Bharatiya Janata Party, which is led by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and the duo like Amit Shah and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, it is the highest and the most paid or the party has the most amount of money in the history of independent India.
Mm.
So now there has been a massive campaign that runs behind what is happening. But before that, I would want to actually give a little background of how this whole thing happened. So taking again a step back here, Yogi Adityanath is an Indian monk who is also a Hindu extremist who wears
Mm.
the garb of a monk and is now a chief minister of one of the largest India's state called Uttar Pradesh.
Mm-hmm.
He was on stage when one of his supporters said this, and I quote exactly: "Now is the time to get their mothers and daughters out of the graves and rape their children. This is the
Mm.
need of the hour, friends, and one of and only Hindu Yuva Wahini can do it." This happened in 2007 or 2008 when Narendra Modi was not in power. The Narendra Modi government has consistently spread consistent lies and
Mm-hmm.
consistently spread abhor, hate against the minorities in the mainstream. And especially this has happened after the BJP government has come into power in 2014. A huge Islamophobic factory runs in India, including the non-state actors affiliated with RSS, as well as the state policy via anti-conversion laws, love jihad,
Mm-hmm.
CAA, NRC, especially NRC, where thousands of Assamese women have been kept out of NRC, even though their husbands and their rest of the families were included. Muslims cannot eat what they want because
Mm-hmm.
they run the boycott halal campaigns. Muslims cannot pray in their designated camps or sites because they run the boycott namaz campaigns. Muslims cannot do business because they are boycotted economically. Muslims cannot buy homes in posh societies because they wouldn't be given, but forget buying homes, they cannot even rent homes at this time
Mm.
because they wouldn't be given homes the moment you I appear to be Muslim, so the moment you see me, you know I'm a Muslim. But men might not be appearing Muslim, so the moment that you hear their name, you just don't give them for lease. Muslims are vilified by the state and media day in and day out. Stereotypes are associated with Muslim men and women, that Muslims are poor, that Muslims are uneducated, that Muslim women are children bearing factories, that Muslims are uneducated. There are all sorts of slurs which are propagated for Muslims, like puncharwalas. Puncharwala is someone who fixes tires or repairs bike tires. It's a profession for uneducated per se, if I can put it that way. Muslims are called sullis, jihadis, jihadans, mullis. These are all the slurs that are, and there are so many other slurs that they use for Muslims. And all these stereotypes are finalized, drafted in the form of posters or videos, and now floated through WhatsApp groups, Facebook pages, or they use all sorts of technology to a point that when TikTok came into existence, they started using TikTok to infiltrate the younger generation with this whole misinformation propaganda. So, to narrate so the narrative is kind of pushed through and seeped into the society. And like Joseph Goebbels, the head of the Nazi Germany Ministry of Propaganda, he said, and again I quote: if you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. And the lie can be maintained only for such a time as the state can shield the people from political, economic, and military consequences of the
Mm.
lie. If thus becomes vitally important for the state to use all of its powers to repress dissent, for the truth is mortal enemy of the lie, and thus by extension the truth is the greatest enemy of the state.
Mm.
So India is acting straight out of the golden book of Nazi Germany. Giving this context, I would like to answer your question that with all this misinformation, there is also misinformation of what he is not doing. So, if
Mm.
we talk about progress in India, if we talk about education, if we talk about the general things, the petrol price is all time high, the GDP is all time low. India has gone to be from poor to the poorer or the poorest country in the world. So, when you have created this hate in the hearts of people. All that the people are talking about right now is that's okay. We are fine if we die of hunger. We don't care, but we don't want Muslims to live in this land. So that is the kind of mentality that has been created, and that has been seeped into the United States as well. So if people are thinking that the Hindutva has not seeped in into the United States, you are extremely wrong, because our kids are going to the same schools that the Hindutvawadi kids are also going in this country. So it is very essential that we keep ourselves aware that the very figure that they are creating out of Mr. Modi is actually based on lies.
You mentioned a little bit about about the Nazi Germany, but I have heard that there is some at least inspiration and admiration for the Nazis by the Hindutva and RSS. And how accurate is that, or in terms of this inspiration and using Nazi Germany as a model?
That is very, very true. As you said, it's just not the Nazi Germany. They have also got, they are inspired by the person who has killed Gandhi, the father of our nation, India.
Mm,
So they are inspired by anyone and everyone who has hated Muslims, who creates a hostile environment for Muslims, either it be Nazi. So the ideology of Nazis was that they were hating a specific religion, just like the Hindutva. To I can actually give you, a couple of correlations between why the Hindutvawadis are very Nazi fantasized, to be precise. So
mm,
comparing Hitler, Hitler did not marry, whereas the Prime Minister Modi did marry and have abandoned his wife. Hitler had a belief that people of a certain religion were enemies of a nation, and so does the Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Hitler's supporters could not tolerate any criticism of Hitler. And oh boy, like after 2014, you talk about the government, and if you are a critic of the government, then you are an anti national. You don't belong in the country. You should go to Pakistan if you are a Muslim. If you don't feel safe, just leave the country. Like political differences have always been there, but the hatred is really not tolerant anymore. And all types of media, example, newspapers, magazines, were used to promote him. That is exactly, I think, would be answer for your earlier question. He crushed, I'm talking about Hitler here. He crushed all his opponents and would always call them anti nationals or traitors, which is being done in India right now. Modi received his values of nationalism by joining the RSS. Hitler
mm.
received his nationalism from joining the German Workers' Party. His campaign slogan was Gute Tage kommen, good days will come. And Prime Minister Modi's campaign slogan is Achhe Din, uh, Achhe Din aane wale hai, something. So it's like the good days are coming. It's the same slogan
Mm.
in a different language. So there are so many similarities that we can put together, and I think precisely why the followers of BJP and RSS and the Hindutvawadis are really in love with the, and they fantasize this whole idea of, you know Nazi Germany. And even if you look at the threats that we get on Twitter or general threats, you would be amazed at the way and the audacity to just taunt or just talk about, how rape is good thing for Muslim women, and how they should not speak much about the Modi government and things like that.
Mm. Now,
I think I'm going to be in trouble after saying all this.
well, we need to say the facts as they are. Uh, Now, I'm reminded that this is uses using technology to spread hate, to target individuals, and so on. And in the earlier report that we did on Islamophobia in India, that technology using social media, Twitter posts, are used as an instrument to really generate lynchings, targeting individuals in relation to love jihad. And maybe we could talk about this intersection of technology and hate, technology and bigotry, and how the RSS, the PGP, and the Hindu activists both Hindu extremists in here and abroad are using this, and how maybe with the question at a later point, how to counter it and what are the tools.
So, as I mentioned earlier in our earlier conversation, that technology has been deeply and much effectively being used by the current ruling party in India. And there have been, again, to answer a little more on that, even before people actually understood the idea of Twitter or Facebook or WhatsApp, BJP was the first one to actually create a IT cell per se. It was
Hmm.
the first party in India to actually create their own IT cell of misinformation. So, to read more on the IT cell, you can read this book called as I Am a Troll by Swati Chaturvedi. She was the head or the lead or one of the persons who was involved in this whole IT cell fiasco. And then she just got fed up and came out of the IT cell to write this book. It is very interesting. There are factual information on how misinformation was spread, how technology was used. And even to date, if you go on and see, you wouldn't be able to see much bad news or much information which is negative about either Prime Minister Narendra Modi or the duo, the Home Minister Amit Shah or the Yogi government or anything relating to BJP and things like that. So there is a huge factory which runs, which uses Quora, which uses Wikipedia, which uses Twitter, Facebook, GitHub, not to forget TikTok and Instagram are also not left alone for the young generation. So I think there is all sorts of media that is being used again, and also they pay the people for the work. It's not that people volunteer. There might be few volunteers, but it's not out of passion that these people are working. There were interviews from these trolls. They are called as like the 2 rupee trolls, just like mocking them. But there have been interviews of these trolls who came out and they literally tell you that I have a Muslim friend, I have a I have a family who is a Muslim. They are really close to me and whatnot. But on internet, I go and I ask to kill Muslims. On internet, I go, I ask for their genocide, and then I go eat biryani in their house because I get paid to do this work. So
Hmm.
I spread hatred, and that's my job. But my neighbors understand because it's my job. But
Hmm.
this whole hatred using technology is not just subsided or sidelined only online. This is coming to the homes. This is coming to the deaths of the families. This is physically happening in the homes or the societies. So I think people need to understand that. And to your other question, there have been a huge double standard of social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook in the West versus India. They have to usually follow the local governmental laws so that they have been really hard over some issues, especially the user's data. I know for a fact that Twitter sends an email to the user if uh, the government asks for some kind of information, but whereas Facebook has not been very transparent in their policies. But besides following the laws, they are not tolerant of hate speech. Sorry, they are just very tolerant of hate speech, and they call for violence of minorities or women, or they are, if there are posts encouraging deaths or genocide. Twitter is better in terms where they are okay taking down the tweets or the accounts or things like that. Facebook outright denies that that is hate speech. There are hundreds and thousands of Facebook pages, Facebook groups, Facebook accounts who are logged, who just comment and come out as trolls on news media or whatever, day in and day out. That whole misinformation, thing that I spoke about is pushed through Facebook. And once you report it, Facebook just tells you that even if there is a video which is calling for open genocide for Muslims, Facebook just says that it is according to their policies, it's not hate speech. And
And
there is no
maybe
buffer.
just on Facebook, because it's local for us in here. There's the whole issue of also the deletes and the untouchables in relations to the technology company that, in essence, creating this
Yes.
almost continuity of violations of human rights. That in the
No wonder
Silicon Valley, it's
journalists
become,
have
yeah.
sued Facebook because Facebook played a very huge part in their genocide.
Yeah, yeah. So we have this aspect where technology is actually being deployed to further human rights violation, and Facebook again is stand accused and also charged with this. Another aspect to this demonization is the role of Bollywood, increasingly being utilized as a focal point for pushing Hindutva and PGP. So, what is the story right now, and also the Muslim actors or actresses that are there, and the changes that we're seeing within the Bollywood?
That's a very interesting question. No one have asked me that question. And perhaps Bollywood has always been, uh, Urdu centric. And the reason why I say it was Urdu centric was because the dialogues were written in Urdu. Urdu is a language in India, and Urdu is quote unquote to be stereotypically spoken only by Muslims, is what the Hindutvawadis feel. But they forget that majority or many writers, the film writers, are non-Muslims who have very good knowledge of Urdu. And coming to the Bollywood, it is also one of the mediums like TikTok or Instagram or Facebook, because every medium has an audience. Like some people like watching TV, some people watch media, some people watch something else like Bollywood movies. But in the recent past, after 2014, you could actually see a huge, there was Islamophobia as well. As I said, like genocide is a process. There was Islamophobia in the movies in the past. There is a stereotypical representation of a Muslim man. The Muslim man would wear this taweez or an amulet in his neck with a surma, it is called, with in the eyes, right? So, and also there would be a cap on his head, depicting that that person, even if you see in a crowd of 100, depicting that that person is a Muslim. So there has been a huge stereotyping of Muslim men, and Muslim women are always subjugated. They are either hit in the movies or they have no voice in the movies. And this whole idea of subjugating Muslim women, Muslim men are violent, has also been pushed through Bollywood, but it has increased hundredfold after, I would say, 2014. It's mainstream right now to depict Muslims as violent creatures. Like this movie, I'm sorry again. My knowledge of movies is not much. I think it's called Padmavat or something. Yeah, it is Padmavat, where Ranveer Singh is the actor who plays the role of a Muslim. Um, Again, ignore my ignorance, of some Muslim leader or whatever, right? Like Muslim king maybe, and he's eating raw meat, like as a cruel person. Like in Islam, you cannot eat raw meat. It's not like halal for you to eat raw meat unless you are being dead. So this is like a gruesome thing, and that's like a promo ad that they are showing, that his hair is all over the place and he's just fetching that meat and eating. So it's to only create this whole idea of Muslims are disgusting, dehumanizing them. And the latest movies, especially, there are so many actors right now who would not even blink an eye to take the movie to show Islamophobia. There have been like, uh, again, ignore. I'm not a huge Bollywood
Mm.
person, so I don't know much of Bollywood. But
I'm not either, but I at least been following the development of the utilization and pressing the Bollywood directors to
there's
actually
actor called
articulate
Akshay Kumar,
a
who,
Hindu nationalist
right,
agenda.
who's, if you see like 10 films of Akshay Kumar in the past couple of years, all of them would be Islamophobic. All of them, without doubt, there would be Islamophobia in that. So it's been, there predominantly, and the Bollywood has been pushing that narrative.
Mhm.
I don't know when it would stop, but I think there are other good actors also who are trying to curb in a way that they could, but I think that there needs to be a lot more to be done.
Yeah. Just on the issue of eating raw meat, it is not prohibited to eat raw meat. So
Understood.
there's some recipes where you could actually eat raw meat. It's just how they represented that you're in the movie that you're just like barbarians and so on. So again, it's how this notion is utilized to demonize a group and a community,
Yes,
especially with the background where you have the restrictions on beef eating and the violence that often is using the violation of the Hindu religious ethos relative to the consumption of beef.
that is correct.
So that's where I think some of that framing in terms of the
There is
media.
again another stereotype that only Muslims eat beef, but then there is data that lower class Hindus, Christians, and all other religions also eat meat. So this is all misinformation factory. Like when you go to them and you burst these misinformations and talk to them, they would just shun you. They would just say that you're lying because they wouldn't believe what you're saying, because it doesn't comprehend into their brains of the misinformation that they have.
Yeah. Well, I have one question from Evergreen that I want to ask. He's saying that the whole notion of love jihad was started as a propaganda by the communists who ruling in the state of Kerala. I don't know how accurate is that, or is that the case that this whole notion of the love jihad propaganda was started by the communists in the Indian state of Kerala? I know that in the Kerala, the Muslims and the communists at least are cooperating in the governing of Kerala. So I just want to make sure that
I
uh,
don't think I am much aware if it is Kerala, but I'm aware of the love jihad topic
yeah.
in general. But I don't know where and when and how or who have started it. But I know that the current regime is using it as a tool to target Muslim men. Muslim men cannot marry any other. Muslim men cannot marry women from the Hindu religion. If they do, they would be jailed. So there are all sorts of leverages being pulled to either jail Muslim men or make sure that Muslim women are felt really unsafe.
Now we're coming to the end of our conversation, and I want two things for us to think about. One, if there's any books that you could recommend for people to read, because I think it's very important for us to get people information and material that they could read. So, what would you recommend for people to read in relations to the current circumstances?
So I think books like How Fascism Works by Jason Stanley or Modi's India by it's subtitled as Hindu Nationalism and the Rise of Ethnic Democracy by Christoph. I'm a Troll by Swati Chaturvedi. Know the RSS by Shamsul Islam. He's a history professor in Delhi University. Essentials of Hindutva, written by Vinayak Savarkar. He's the man who first coined the term Hindutva in 1923. I think this will help anyone understand what the vision of RSS is in India, why it has a strong resemblance with the National Socialism of Hitler and its fascism.
Great. And maybe you could send us those and we'll post them on Facebook and YouTube so people who want to read to make sure that they actually pick these books because it's very important for us to keep updated and to have this information handy. My next question is for everyone who's watching, what can we do? Right? Uh, what can we do? Which organizations should we connect with? Who's doing the work? If there's a congressman, a senator, someone that people could actually engage with. Uh, so, what's your marching order for people to do to make an impact?
Marching marching orders that made me laugh.
Well, you know.
I think creating more and more awareness. As I said, like when before Bully Bhai happened, I was an activist. I was very vocal on social media, but never come on interviews or live interviews, or never spoken to media or written op-eds or things like that. So, creating awareness is the number one thing for the world to know that India is said to be on the verge of a genocide of Indian minorities. My community is really really affected at this time in India, and it would really mean a lot for the world to talk for my community. Organizations like Indian American Muslim Council are really doing a great job talking about what is happening in India. They have been giving congressional briefings, and
Hmm.
there are so many other things that they do at this time. And I think there are very handful organizations who are doing a lot for India right now. And apart from IAMC, I do not I'm not aware of, or maybe I do not have much knowledge on the other organizations. But what you can do is also read the news from the West and not from India, because the Indian news media outlet is very biased, and they are very pro government, and they have to be. They should be pro government to receive the funds and whatnot, to receive the brownie points from the government. So I would recommend you read much of the articles from the West, from the United States. Make yourself aware. Talk about it to your families, talk about it to your senators, talk about it to your congressmen and congresswomen. Create awareness that India is on the verge of genocide and Indian minorities need help.
I'm just trying. I think Amina's comment in here on the
I would
is
like to take that question. Do you
yeah.
have a list of organizations we should not support, such as Seva.org? Yes, so there are organizations which are predominantly Hindutva based. Uh, Seva.org, during COVID, Seva.org came up with a campaign to help the COVID patients back in India. But what people didn't know was Seva.org was associated with RSS in India. So we do not know how the funds were used. There were hundreds of thousands of dollars which were raised by that organization. There are organizations like HSS, which who are predominantly vocal on their stance on RSS. I think mere Googling of who supports RSS would give you an idea on which organizations you should be avoiding to donate.
Thank you. This was an enriching conversation. It's a difficult topic, but it's definitely enriching conversation. It was a pleasure to have you, Amina, with us today in this conversation, and you did great. The fact that you haven't had interviews in the past, that just is possibly for your lack of wanting to be in the front, but definitely this should be a regular undertaking on your part. The cause of India and the cause of what the Muslim community is facing in India is something that we need to continue to expose, to talk, to speak, to write, and to really engage across the board. We're talking about a country that's 1.2 billion people with the largest Muslim population
Yes.
in around the world, not as a country, but within India. And the fact that we have almost a daily occurrence of lynching, of violence, of death, of targeting of Muslim women, Muslim men, of the notions of the love jihad that Muslim men are in marriage are not marrying for the regular normal circumstances, the lynching of individuals who are accused of beef eating. And we haven't covered Kashmir. I did have a whole program on Kashmir and the violation with the removal of Article 35, and now the whole attempt to settle and change the demographics in Kashmir, one of the most heavily militarized zones in the world.
Yes.
So I urge people who are watching to continue to educate yourself on the circumstances that are taking place in India. Make sure to read the material that we'll post on the Facebook. Make sure to connect to the Indian American Council for updates. They have a website and information. They're a great organization. I think yesterday, the day before, they did a briefing in Congress. I was unable to attend, but I was aware of it and encourage people to access the recording that is there. So, making change is a collective effort, and the first step is educating yourself and making sure to make an impact. So, thank you, Jazakumullah khair, and good evening.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.